Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the cycle of a narcissist, aka the three stages, aka the triangle. I don't think many people call it that, but it's idealization, devaluation, and discard. And that can happen. It can happen as a full relationship. I.e., they idealize you, then start to devalue you over a certain amount of time, and then the discard is essentially an ender of the relationship. Ultimately, that one cycle ends the relationship. It can also look like it can happen 3 times, 7 times. It doesn't really matter. It just depends on the style and the dynamic of the relationship. You can have, that's what that, especially depending on the awareness of the victim. You're codependent at the extremes. It's codependent narcissist, right? And the super extremes, it's extreme codependent psychopath. I hope that wasn't you. If it was, I feel for you. But so it can look like, when the discard happens, you can be in a situation where the narcissist is discarding you, but is already devalued enough to where you're now dependent on them. So you can, once the discard happens, then often the codependent will be vulnerable enough and gaslit enough to then take the breadcrumbing, take the just essentially feel like they can't live without the narcissist. Those highs and lows, right? And so the cycle can be on a continuing basis. If you're in a marriage, I often think of 17-year marriages where that often is the case over 17 years, and that's I can't imagine. And so just kind of want to talk about what that looks like in the framing of the cycle, and just to kind of create a frame for again, you're not on this video because you're just doing your research. More than likely you're like I was. You're now doing the work. You're trying to figure out the confusion. You're trying to figure out, just pick up the pieces, right? So I have to start by saying I'm so sorry. It wasn't your fault. It's gonna get better. All right. So have some grace for yourself while you do the work. Okay. I'm gonna preface it with that. So as we talk about this, this framing of just kind of like, I want to do it in a framing that kind of, I think it's very important to not look at basically anyone. These are personality disorders. Although the intent may be sadistic or might be evil, you can say all this stuff, but ultimately I think the way you regain your power the fastest, and never mind, forget fastest, it has nothing to do with speed. You regain your power the most, how do I say this? You regain the most amount of your power back and become a more galvanized version of yourself by framing it in a way that doesn't make you a victim and in need of sympathy. Although that's going to be, don't feel bad if that is how it feels and how you tell your story in the beginning. But having said that, I just want to talk about this in the framing of why and just understanding, because to really, it's like Hannibal Lecter, to really heal, to really be able to heal, I really believe you have to understand what happened, because abusive people aren't going to tell you, envious people aren't going to tell you, toxic people aren't going to tell you. You have to figure it out, unfortunately, looking back. And some people don't want to look back. I'm going on a tangent. Okay, so you notice it's 1 to 2, right? It's one good thing with 2 bad things. You got idealization. Well, depending on how you look at it, that's still bad, but it feels good. And then 2 negatives, like, so it's all bad. It's all a very unhealthy way of connecting with someone. But so, having said that, I mean, I only bring that up because it's like, it's unbalanced. The whole thing's unbalanced. And why does a narcissist, I think it's important to know why, it's hot here, why a narcissist needs to even idealize you, right? A couple of reasons. And as I've been thinking about this recently, it really does, like, I kind of am now thinking back 5 seconds ago when I said it's a one good thing. I take that back. Because the intent, whether the narcissist knows it or not, the idealization phase might be the most manipulative in the sense, because they do it because they can't connect, right? They don't have a sense of self. They have to have a false self that is essentially predatory in nature, because to be one to idealize, you are immediately wearing a mask to basically fish for somebody to be their new supply. And it's doubly bad because the codependent is, very vulnerable and is very much looking for, love, and that is very hard to say no to. I mean, when you have somebody very charming and just acts like you are just everything they've wanted, like everything they've needed. They laugh at all your jokes, just so much energy, and they give you energy, and it's all love and fun, and it just gets all exciting, and it's all the friends and all the just fun, it's how do you say no to that? So that's why that idealization phase is like so bad. It's so unhealthy. It's just so cruel, because that narcissist is right off the gate is just taking advantage of vulnerable people. And yeah, so I think it's important to talk about why, right? And looking back now, you can kind of see, right, the lack of self, right? It all comes down to a very, very frail, very, very low self-esteem, very weak inner child and inner person. They don't have an inner love for themselves. It's not even an inner love. I would say the codependent does have an inner love. The narcissist is empty. There's not even it's a complete false self and a fantasy world. Going through the yellow. And so they absolutely need other people to validate them and to give them their supply. And the more genuine, the better. The more, the more powerful. Everything that the narcissist is not. If you're, honest and strong and, motivated and attractive and generous and all these things, that's just watering at the mouth. There's going to be watering at the mouth. And, yeah, so that's the idealization phase, right? It took maybe a little bit too long on that, but I really think that phase is not talked about enough. It's the gateway. It's when you understand that and why that happens, you can very easily, it's too, they say if it's too good to be true, it probably is. If it feels too good to be true, it probably is. Unless we're talking about Bitcoin. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't even said that. This is not one of those videos, but. So, yeah, so that's idealization. Roping you in, right? And so then you have the devaluation, which is essentially the narcissist is becoming comfortable. They're seeing where your boundaries are, and they're going to try to erode them as much as they possibly can. And the more that you allow them to be eroded, the more I believe the more pain there will be in the end. Because let's say they take it to the highest level where you're 100% dependent, you're gaslit to the nth degree, you just try to appease them, you'll have no sense of self, and ultimately the discard will be so much more brutal. So that's what I'll say about that. They're going to be testing your boundaries in the devaluation phase. You might ask yourself why, right? Why do you think? You know, first of all, they're aliens. No. Yeah, go ahead, lady. Yeah, they're not aliens, but they're hey, go ahead. They're not yeah, I mean, it is really pretty accurate to say they're demonic. Like, I heard a guy say that in a video recently. You know, we talk about why they had a bad childhood, why this and that. You know, I had a bad childhood. I didn't do any of that. So in a sense, it's like, yeah. Anyway, so all that metaphysical aside, why do they pragmatically? Why are they discarding you? It's their real side, right? They are projecting their insecurities onto you. They're now making you responsible for their because ultimately it's and that's kind of where I look at it as demonic, because it's like a hatred of the good, and that's where it's sick. I mean, and that's where it's, to me, is most sick, and because you ultimately reflect back to them what they don't have, and oh my God, better hope you don't see them for who they are. I mean, of course you will eventually, but once you see them, assuming you do, and they don't discard you before, there's gonna be a lot of confusion. It's not gonna be just a one-time thing, right? Don't feel like you're in a different, like you're an outlier if you don't actually know when the discard was, or when they knew that you knew. It's all kind of wishy-washy by design. That's how they want it. They want you confused. And in a perfect situation, the narcissist, of course, wants to do maximum damage. They want to be able to have you as supply while not even having you around. They want, like, in the ideal situation, narcissist wants you to think about them for the rest of your life. They love that. And that's real sick. So, idealization, devaluation. The devaluation is, and sometimes the devaluation is not necessarily always going to lead to, like I said, a discard where it's the end of the relationship. There'll be a discard in that they keep you so weak that they discard you, and then you want them back because you want that hit. You want that. They're like a drug, and you're dependent on them. So then they're gonna idealize you into like a, it's that fun whatever. Like it's crazy, right? It's so fun and crazy. I took the freaking wrong turn. God damn it! I'm going somewhere else. Got really into narcissism this time around. Man, I really went the wrong way. Holy shit. Well, we can talk about it more now. This might be a longer video. All right. Even, I guess what I'm getting is, even if the discard isn't for a while, I mean, you can be in the devaluation phase for like months, a year, it depends, but it can be for a very, very long time. And then that's kind of where they want you to just kind of stick around there. And the kind of like the longer you're in that, the more dependent you will be, right? Because that becomes a conditioning now, more of a conditioning of that cycle. And then the discard is going to be more likely to not be the end of the relationship. I mean, it's hard to say absolutes, but you see what I'm saying? Like, they can keep you on that devaluation to weaken you. Therefore, it's harder to even see what they're what they're doing. So when the discard does happen, you might be more susceptible to the idealization and starting the whole cycle over again. Like, oh, see? And you can very easily conflate them changing with, no, it's just another cycle. They didn't change. 99.999, they did not change. That's a literal stat, especially if they're a psychopath. They are just repeating the cycle, and it's going to be devaluation again. These people do not understand how to be vulnerable. They do not understand how to connect properly. They have no sense of self. How could they respect your boundaries and who you are if they don't even know who they are? That's really what it comes down to, and I think that's a really helpful framing when we're talking about this kind of, cluster B, like, especially narcissism. That I think that really fits. So the devaluation phase can be for a while. And ultimately the discard is like, usually, that one's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's not breaking up with, it's not taking a break, it's not reevaluation, it's not it's not anything healthy that you would use at the end of a relationship. It's a perfect word to describe the final stage of the cycle, which is just discard. It's just done. And in a way, like, whatever can do the most damage, right? So it's like, that's why it is really the perfect word, because it's like the discard can happen, right after the devaluation. It can be real quick. It can be, like I said, it could be a year of devaluation and just like kind of breadcrumbing, and then when you're just at your weakest moment, often if you might have just had a cold, you might have just like you could just have surgery. Oh my God, I feel for you if that's the case. Hear me out here. This is really important. If you were at your most vulnerable point, if you're having a surgery, or you just like, you guys lost a kid, or you just like somebody died in your family, like something really bad right in the middle of the devaluation phase, and you get discarded and the relationship ends, trust me, you're gonna want to blame yourself, and this is what they want, and it's not even what they want at first, but I'll explain. This is why they did that. Your vulnerability shed a mirror onto their lack of empathy. Your weakness was not acceptable to them. They don't care about your needs. And to the extent that you have needs, so if you had, you lost a job, whatever it is, and you need a break from their, life-sucking energy, they don't accept that. If it's a long period of time, it only sheds the light and makes them feel more seen the longer that period happens. So I'm sorry it happened, but I promise you, there's nothing you could have done. And that's what they want. They want you to think that you are the problem, and that weakness, what are you doing? And that weakness is why they left. And it's your weakness. That's your fault. It's not your fault. You're a human being. You're probably on empty the whole time anyway. And I'm so sorry, and I promise you, it's a blessing. Because if that thing didn't happen, that big catastrophic event didn't happen, they would have had another chance at another cycle on you. Who knows? Maybe it would have been 17 years. Maybe during that first discard, for those of you, my heart goes out to you, 15 plus marriage, there was the initial discard, you have that moment in your mind, reframe that and think, well, that's not helpful, but for that person, but for the sake of argument, a more catastrophic event would make the relationship end. In other words, that first discard cycle, that first narcissistic cycle, if the catastrophic event happened during your discard, during your devaluation and during kind of the discard period, and you needed them the most, just know that, and the assuming the relationship ended, just know that it seems like obvious, but it is a blessing. And it hurts like shit, I'm sure. I know how that feels, but just know that it was a blessing, okay? And I know it's gonna feel crazy and you're not gonna understand. I'm here at Boxing. I hope this video helped you guys. That's the 3 stages of narcissistic, the 3 narcissistic stages. The 3 stages of the narcissist. So, idealization, devaluation, and ultimately discard. And so, there's nothing you could have done. These are sick people that need therapy, but they're not going to get it. So you're going to just have to no contact them. And you might have to move cities. Depending on how bad they got their hooks in you. But I'm here for you. You're not alone. And hang in there, all right? All right, guys? Stay strong. I'm out.